This is a film analyzing the power dynamics present in The Great Gatsby and The Godfather.
I found the most interesting power dynamics in both The Great Gatsby and The Godfather to exist in gender dynamics. In The Great Gatsby, Daisy has power in her multiple relationships with her husband Tom Buchanan and Gatsby. Daisy has the power to affect Gatsby's life with her decision between both men in her life, Gatsby and Tom, as she controls the power dynamic between them and even gets Gatsby to go out of his way to pursue her. Quote, "I want you and Daisy to come over to my house," end quote. He said, "I'd like to show her around." This quote shows how Gatsby goes out of his way to mention Daisy when inviting Nick and Daisy over to his house, as well as taking the fall for her in the end when she gets accused of running someone over with her car. In The Godfather, the opposite occurs. In the beginning, women are portrayed as weak or having to be decided for by the men present. Two instances in the beginning are when two different men come for help from Vito Corleone. One man asks that Don Corleone help him to keep his daughter's boyfriend from being deployed to war so that his daughter can be married. This is an example of the men, aka her father and Don Corleone, making decisions for his daughter's life. The second man comes to ask for revenge for his daughter who got abused by her boyfriend at school.
America has made my fortune, and I raised my daughter in the American fashion. I gave her freedom, but I taught her never to dishonor her family. She found a boyfriend, not an Italian. She went to the movies with him. She stayed out late. I didn't protest. 2 months ago, he took her for a drive with another boyfriend. They made her drink whiskey, and then they tried to take advantage of her. She resisted. She kept her honor. So they beat her like an animal.
This is an example of showcasing how women cannot stand up for themselves in these situations during this time in the movie. The main divide is the lack of involvement of women in the mafia. Every meeting between mafia members discussing mafia business, there are very few to none women present or involved.
Although many similarities arise when comparing the power dynamics of the protagonists of The Great Gatsby and The Godfather, the most apparent is their rise to affluence. In the former, we learn that Jay Gatsby, formerly known as James Gatz, was raised in humble circumstances. Gatsby describes his parents as, quote, shiftless and unsuccessful farm people. Gatsby inherits nothing from his parents nor his friend Dan Cody. So how is he able to accumulate the extravagant riches he displays in the story? Through his illegal business dealings with Mayor Wolfsheim. Although not explicitly stated, it is implied that after returning from World War I, Gatsby and Wolfsheim organized some sort of prohibited bootlegging or gambling that allows Gatsby to live his lifestyle. When Nick questions Mayor Wolfsheim about this, he says that, quote, I raised him out of nothing, right up out of the gutter, unquote. This statement verifies Gatsby's illegal relationship with Mayor Wolfsheim and his subsequent rise to power. Similarly, Vito Corleone came from humble beginnings. Vito was an orphaned Italian immigrant who was given nothing. Upon his arrival to the United States, Vito began engaging in criminal activity with Peter Clemenza. Although he was known to refrain from the sale of drugs, Vito took advantage of many of the same practices as Gatsby, such as illegal gambling rings and prohibited liquor. A notable reference to this occurred in Don Corleone's initial meeting with Virgil Sollozzo. Sollozzo extends an offer for the Corleones to participate in the Tartaglia's family's drug business. Don Corleone declines his offer, mentioning that his political friends consider the drug business dirty, and how he's mostly involved in other ventures like gambling.
But I must say no to you, and I'll give you my reasons. It's true, I have a lot of friends in politics, but they wouldn't be friendly very long if they knew my business was drugs instead of gambling, which they regard as a harmless vice, but drugs is a dirty business.
Oh, Don Corleone.
It doesn't make any difference to me what a man does for a living, you understand? But your business is a little dangerous.
Additionally, Michael, Vito's son, is able to gain power through his reputation as a distinguished officer in World War II. This parallels the power that Gatsby gains from his time fighting in World War I. It is clear that the protagonists in both stories are born with nothing, yet accumulate power in similar fashions. Gatsby and Vito both engage in criminal activity to profit. Gatsby and Michael both enjoy the reputation of a war hero, which increases their social standing.
How did The Great Gatsby and The Godfather influence my thinking about the powerful and the powerless, and where do I line up on important issues in our world? These pieces show different power dynamics. Daisy, on one hand, has power over two men due to their feelings toward her. I can relate Daisy's power to today because back in the time of The Great Gatsby, men possessed all the power politically and financially. But today, it has begun to shift in the other direction. With the Me Too movement, women's voices have now been heard, and the once powerless, dependent women in the early 1900s have become strong, independent women. Before reading The Great Gatsby and watched The Godfather, I had tons of admiration and respect for the wealthy and powerful, because I had imagined that they worked harder than anyone else to acquire the position that they have earned today. But after reading and watching the book and movie, I have to admit I've lost some respect for the wealthy, and this is due to their abuse of their power. They have their influence to benefit themselves and ignore the powerless. Gatsby uses his newly acquired wealth to throw parties and to win over a woman, and spends his money in new lavish items like a beautiful pool and a beautiful car that he rarely even uses.
An example of someone with power not helping the powerless would be Jordan Belfort. He would be the best real-world person to relate to Gatsby. They both have new money and gained it from unethical and illegal means. Jordan Belfort was a powerful and wealthy man, but as shown in The Wolf of Wall Street, he spent all his money on lavish items and ignored those who were powerless and who were currently struggling. To kickstart Jordan Belfort's success, he would falsely advertise penny stocks to the uneducated middle and lower class citizens, and he would take the money and lose it in stocks that he invested them in. He would earn money off the suffering of others. And his thought on this immoral practice was that he could spend the money better than they can. After obtaining the massive amount of wealth, he began getting investigated by the FBI. Since he had so much money, he decided to try to bribe the officials to get off his case. This was a clear sign of him abusing power and wealth. This was similar to when The Godfather tried to bribe a movie producer and director in order to put his son-in-law into the movie. The abuse of power with some of the powerful and wealthy is a known fact, and I wish more people would try to stand up and push back against them, similar to how the Me Too movement has in the last decade.